webinar of the British Council Outstanding Women Campaign. Today's session will be recorded and we'll start the recording now.
Yeah, ready.
Leading to International Women's Day this year, this will be your opportunity to hear from and speak directly to inspiring women from the Americas, learn from their research and their experience of studying or working in the UK. Today, we will hear about environmental social sciences at Imperial College London. My name is Karina Pichardo. I'm a project coordinator for higher education at the British Council. The British Council is the UK's organization for cultural relations and education, and part of our work includes promoting opportunities for international students to study in the UK. Today, we are proud to be joined by Catherine Ames, International Student Recruitment Manager at Imperial College London, and also Dr. Morena Mills. She is Senior Lecturer in Environmental Social Sciences at Imperial College London, Center for Environmental Policy. She is originally from Brazil. She has directed the Masters in Conservation Sciences course at Imperial as well. Her research focuses on how and why biodiversity conservation initiatives spread around the world and what impact they have on the environment and people. She aims to get insights from environmental social sciences and understand what motivates people to adopt more sustainable behaviors. She has collaborated with government and NGOs around the world and has helped develop environmental education programs such as Agua in Brazil that highlights the importance of aquatic systems, and Wal Shale in India to understand the relationship between people and local wildlife. Today, she's going to talk to you about how her research is addressing the environmental crisis we face and why some initiatives have worldwide success while others fail. So welcome both of you, and we're happy to have you on this webinar. So I hand over to you.
Wonderful. So let me just try to share my screen with you. So if I share here. Great. Are you seeing my slides?
Yes, you just need to go to full mode.
To full mode, okay. So I'll just do that. Wonderful. So thank you so much for joining in, everyone. So my name is Morena Mills. I am originally from São Paulo, Brazil, where I grew up between the city and the Atlantic forest coastline. And I think it was the beauty of that forest and coastline which set me on the career path I find myself today. So I've always, let me just see if there you go. So I've always been passionate about the environment. I've always been really passionate about the ocean. I love diving, surfing, and always look for an excuse to spend more time in the sea. So when I was about 18, I decided to undertake a Bachelor of Marine Studies in Australia, where I learned a lot about how people depend on nature. I learned that we rely on forests for oxygen, wood, and fertile soil, and rely on the animals that thrive within it for pollination that keep our farmland productive. In fact, actually 35% of the crop production is influenced by birds, bats, and bees. We also rely on the nature for the food we eat. So whether this is directly eating species from the wild or by feeding our animals with fish meal, for example. Coral reefs are actually one of the protein factories of the world and can yield an average of about 15 tons of fish and seafood per square kilometer each year. And the oceans absorb about a third of all the carbon dioxide produced by human activities. And the oceans have absorbed about 90% of the heat trapped in the atmosphere by the rising concentration of greenhouse gases. So we're really dependent on these on these healthy ecosystems. In fact, we don't only need nature to survive, we need it to be okay. So knowing and experiencing nature actually decreases the population prevalence of diseases such as high blood pressure and depression. It decreases the prevalence of high blood pressure and disease and depression. So even though nature's been very good to us, we haven't necessarily been very good to it. So the Anthropocene has resulted in changes to the environment humans could never even dream of a couple of decades ago. We're turning oceans from thriving habitats for fish of all shapes and sizes to barren deserts where the only thing that you can find is jellyfish, as can be seen in this picture. And ancient habitats such as coral reefs have bleached and died at unprecedented scales. And while a lot of this damage is irreversible, not all of it is. Some people have taken conservation and restoration into their own hands and transformed barren landscapes back to productive ones, where the species who lived there decades ago thrive again. So this photograph I love. It's a photograph by a photographer from Brazil called Sebastião Salgado, and this is his piece of land that he decided to reforest. So this is just an example that a single man did, but there's lots of conservation initiatives where this is happening at a broad scale all around the world. And these are the types of these are the types of initiatives that my colleagues and I study. So we're trying to find out when and why conservation initiatives are effective and reach scale so that we can inform the design of other initiatives in the future. So here's an example of a conservation initiative that reached scale. I'll see if the video, I can get this video to play. Let's see, yeah, it's playing. So this is a video of Namibian conservation conservancies, community conservancies. And as you can see through time, more and more of these community conservancies are occupying the landscape. And they're not occupying the landscape in a random way. You can see that they're aggregating in particular areas. So what we're really interested in is what is it that leads to these aggregations? So the project that I lead is called Insights for Catalyzing Conservation. And basically what we do is we look at conservation initiatives around the globe. And we try to look for commonalities between these initiatives. So what is it that these initiatives have in common, and what can we learn from them so that we can apply to other conservation initiatives around the world to help them reach scale more quickly. So in a recent study that I published, we found that most community-based conservation initiatives, actually most conservation initiatives that we looked at, followed this slow, fast, slow model. So this slow, fast, slow model is a model which is kind of limited by communication of the initiative. So at the start, there's only a few adopters and few people talking about the benefits of adoption. So that's why people are adopting it really slowly. But then as more people adopt, more people start chatting and talking about the benefits of adoption. And then you see the steep rise in adoption, and it tapers out when basically all the adopters in the system have either adopted or are not interested in adopting. Most of the initiatives follow this curve. Some initiatives follow this other curve, which is this blue curve in the screen, where basically in the beginning there's no limit to this information spread. So people are just adopting without being limited by receiving information about that initiative. So, but while we found that you could kind of predict like how these different conservation initiatives spread, and by predicting how the mechanisms of spread, you can kind of predict it into the future as well. While we see that the mechanism of spread is consistent, the rate and the level of adoption is context specific. So for example, this is a map of the Philippines, and you see that for some areas, adoption of marine protected areas in this case is much greater than others. And the MPAs in the Philippines are spreading more rapidly, where there's a range of NGOs and universities offering extension support, compared to areas which are either more isolated or are impacted by political turmoil. So people within these areas aren't adopting these initiatives as fast. Interestingly, so we looked at 22 conservation initiatives around the world, and we found initiatives that spread really quickly or spread amongst a lot of the adopters that could adopt it. But we didn't find any initiative that spread both quickly and amongst most of the adopters. So we still need to figure out what. So it basically means that we can still improve all these conservation initiatives, and there's a lot to learn about how to implement them. So now that we know that many conservation initiatives share this mechanism of spread, we are using diffusion of innovation theory to understand some of the factors which drive or hinder spread. So this theory discusses how the initiative characteristics, the adopter characteristics, and the environmental characteristics influence how and why and at what rate different innovations go to scale. So for the rest of my presentation, I'm going to tell you about one of these initiatives, so the locally managed marine areas, which are one of my favorite stories of spread, and which Arundhati, who's featured here, is studying further. So coastal villages within Pacific countries are highly dependent on fish for sale and subsistence, fish like this coral trout. Yet within the past decades, the fish caught are getting smaller, and the fisheries have become increasingly unsustainable. The government often lacks the resources to invest in resource management, even though the population is highly dependent on the resources. So a growing population, new and more efficient technology, and an increasing number of fishing boats from overseas threatens food security of the coastal communities. So population of fish, like the coral trout, have started to decline. So in Fiji, in response to this growing recognition that communities could potentially manage their own resources, the government gave back the resource management rights to the local people, to the indigenous clans. So similar to how in a lot of the Western world we own land, in Fiji and some of the other Pacific countries, the indigenous people actually own the ocean, right? So there's boundaries. So these lines that you can see around the islands, they're boundaries that are owned by specific indigenous clans. And these areas, these traditional fishing areas, are called ngolingolis. So the government created this legislation which basically decentralized the fishing rights to the communities. So the communities could now start managing their own resources. And empowered to do so, one group formed called the Fiji Locally Managed Marine Area Network. This is a group of practitioners and communities that started working to promote the sustainable use of marine resources. Resource management tools were actually used in a lot of the areas in the Pacific for centuries, and they've been used traditionally. So for example, in Fiji, when the chief of a village dies, a proportion of the community's fishing grounds is set aside as a no-take or a tambo area, as a token of respect for the chief. So basically, after 100 days, that area that was closed is reopened, so closed for fishing. The area is reopened, and people are allowed to harvest in that area again. And the supernatural powers of the chief is supposed to be represented by how good the harvest is. So measured by the abundance and the size of the catch. Other areas in the Pacific have been protected because people believe they have a spiritual connection to some of these animals. So for example, sharks and crocodiles. So if an area is known to have a large aggregation of sharks and crocodiles, for example, and the clan is associated to one of these species, they won't fish within that area because they believe that who they'd be fishing are their ancestors, basically. So when implementing these locally managed marine areas, these old traditions were revitalized, right? So you see a link between these kind of recent management, contemporary management structures and these old traditions. And this is what these locally managed marine areas look like. So you have those ngolingolis, which are the traditional fishing grounds, kind of represented by these the dotted line. And then within that area, there's lots of different management strategies. So you have rotational closures, so areas that are open and closed in a rotational basis. You have permanent closures, and you have other management measures, for example, like limits to what you can fish or ways that you can fish. So one of the cool things about fish is that as they grow bigger, generally when they ovulate, they have more eggs, in contrast to humans, right? So if you let the fish grow bigger, there's going to be more eggs in the system, and these eggs are more, so there's more chances of these eggs growing into adults, and there'll be more fish within that region. So the fish will likely spill over to the adjacent area. So as well as the fishermen, when that area is open, being able to catch bigger fish, there will be more fish around the general area. And thus there's going to be, as a result of the implementation of these management areas, there would be more fish to eat. There will also be benefits to the future generations, right? Because there'll be a more sustainable fishery in the long term. And because these locally managed marine areas have kind of brought back or touched some of these old customs within Fiji, there's a greater respect for the elders and for the traditions and customs within the region. Also, there's this community empowerment that has happened as a result of the implementation of locally managed marine areas. And the communities themselves have access to information and outside agencies that they didn't have before, right? So they can not only use this access for benefits in terms of resource management, but they can use this access for other things like development interests. And this is all done in a way which is really compatible to what people do on their day-to-day. So, for example, this picture is a man who is, this is his little house, and behind the window, so he's like standing beside this kind of big door type thing, but the window beside him, there's a table, which is his kitchen table. And this man's responsible for overseeing the management of the LMMA. So he doesn't have to change much of what he does generally, right? He generally spends a lot of his time sitting at that kitchen table playing cards or whatever with his friends. So he doesn't have to change much of what he does to actually oversee what's happening within this area. So the people that live within this community know that there's always somebody watching over the area, and he's accountable to those people. So the locally managed marine area network was quite brilliant in some of the strategies they used. So first they kind of allowed, they put a lot of their information online, and they put it online in a way that communities and villagers from Fiji would find the information accessible, right? So it's not these really hardcore scientific reports. It's just reports that are easy to read, that anybody with a bit of an education can kind of follow and start implementing locally managed marine areas within their island. The other thing that they did is that they have these demonstration sites. So basically they'll get chiefs from one village that hasn't adopted a locally managed marine area and take them to visit chiefs from another village that have. And these chiefs will exchange information between them. And if the chief is obviously happy with the LMMA that they implemented, they're going to tell the other chiefs about it. And they're getting information from people that are just like them, which is a lot more reliable than them getting information from Westerners, for example. So the way that they've managed to develop the locally managed marine area network has been really kind of using the strengths that the Fijian community has. And so now if you look back at that map that I showed you before, the dark gray area, so not the reefs, but the dark gray area, which is highlighted here with the red, are the areas which the traditional, I guess, the indigenous fishing areas, which have been turned into locally managed marine areas. So you can see that most of the Fijian waters are now managed by communities for both conservation and some of these other benefits that I mentioned. And if you go back to the theory, you can look back at some of the characteristics of the theory of diffusion of innovation. You will see that there's a lot of the things that appeared in this story about Fiji kind of appear in Fiji in this theory. So for example, there's lots of different elements of the relative advantage is provided by lots of different benefits, and everything is done in a way that's compatible with local values and social organization. So we're not only looking at this in Fiji, but as I mentioned before, we're investigating this throughout the world in both marine and terrestrial case studies, and we're really digging into some of these stories about success and trying to look at both qualitative and quantitative evidence for what factors really drove I guess drove the impact and drove the spread of the conservation initiative. And our research is being developed in a way that it supports practice. So you might have seen in that slide where I had the title of the initiative, that there's both Imperial College London and Conservation International's logo in there. So Conservation International is a big conservation NGO. It's American, but it's got like offices all around the world, and they're not really interested in. I guess they're interested in scientific research, but what they really want is information to inform practice. So while our framework can be used as a diagnostic tool to try to understand what drives the establishment, impact, and scaling of different initiatives and across the world, this diagnostic tool and this diagnostic tool is critical in terms of actually developing understanding. What we're doing simultaneously is trying to figure out how do we use this understanding to inform the development of different strategies to implement and scale initiatives, and to assess the likelihood of different initiatives reaching scaling. So so different foundations or different organizations can actually invest in those characteristics that are needed to aid scaling of different conservation initiatives. So, and I guess the idea of all of this is that we'll help nature continue to thrive, and by doing that, hopefully we're also helping people continue to thrive. So thank you very much for listening, and these are all my collaborators for the work that I've showed you today. This is definitely not a one-man effort. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thanks, Morena, such a great presentation. Now we are gonna hand over to Catherine. If you can stop sharing your presentation so Catherine can, there you go. Right. Okay. Also, before Catherine starts, I also wanted to mention, if you have any questions either about Morena's presentation or Catherine's presentation, you can send them to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will address all the questions at the end of the presentation. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that presentation, Morena. Really interesting to hear of the work you're doing in such an important area at the moment. So my part of the presentation, I'm going to tell you a bit more about Imperial as a university where Morena is based. So I'll talk a bit in terms of kind of student perspective in terms of our offering and what you might expect if you were to come and study with us. So a bit about our kind of community. So we're quite a unique university in the UK, being solely focused on science, engineering, medicine and business. So we do very much encourage kind of interdisciplinary work in between those areas, but we are a sort of specialist institution As you can see there from some of our sort of awards that our academics have been awarded, yeah, we are pretty good at what we do as well. In terms of kind of the makeup of students, we're just under kind of half graduate students and just over half undergraduates, around 20,000 in total, which is kind of medium sized for the UK. A bit more about our community in terms of being very topical about this webinar and this particular kind of week in the lead up to International Women's Day. I'm very proud of kind of the work that we're trying to do to showcase the women at our university in terms of our students and our academic staff and our alumni. So just to highlight a few things that are going on just today. For example, as part of our Women at Imperial week, or a few days that is going on over into next week. So today we had things like a Career Moves workshop, a Wikithon, where we're trying to actually promote female scientists across the globe through sort of editing Wikipedia entries, as well as some department-specific initiatives. If you're interested in kind of finding out other ways we're kind of supporting women and hear about more fantastic stories from our students and our staff and alumni, do check out our Her Imperial pages as well. There's a lot more information on there. So kind of mentioned in terms of being quite good at what we do. So just to say, you know, we are generally ranked fairly highly in most rankings that you might look at, either worldwide or sort of UK nationally. But what I'd like to highlight more is a couple of sort of rankings that I think kind of speak about as particularly. One of those is that we've been voted once more the most international university in the UK, and that is based not only on our kind of student population. Over 58% of our students come from outside the UK, from well over 130 different countries, but also our academic staff, very much international. And then also we collaborate very much internationally as well. So whether that's through kind of partnerships with institutions across the globe, to joint publications, for example. So you heard about the work Morena's doing, and that's very much going to be kind of linked globally in terms of her network as well. So we're very much an international university, which means that you're getting ideas and perspectives from across the globe when you are in the classroom with us. Also very proud of the fact that we have been voted the most innovative university in the UK as well. So that's, I'll talk about our kind of ecosystem of innovation, but we really want to kind of support our students and our staff when they have those kind of amazing ideas and want to kind of get them out there to the wider world. So we're very proud of the kind of innovation programs we have on offer. So we're located right in the heart of London, and that obviously does have a number of benefits, we would say. Obviously, some of you may have visited London in terms of a tourist. You might have gone to some of our fantastic kind of tourist sites and some of the kind of museums. So we're located in South Kensington, next to the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum. And yet these are fantastic kind of social resources. Actually, students can use them academically as well. So, for example, once a month, the Science Museum have Science Museum Lates, whereby they can go along after lectures and listen to specialist speakers in a field that they're perhaps interested in. We also have campuses located attached to medical campuses and our brand new White City campus as well. London also has the added advantage of kind of lots of employer engagement opportunities. So if you're thinking of kind of building those networks for future careers, there really is no better place than London to start sort of networking and meeting those future employers. To say it's not just us who say London is a fantastic city to study in as well. So London was voted in 2019 the best student city in the QS rankings for things like employability and international outlook. So this is just to give you a kind of idea of where we are based. So if you kind of see the sort of in the bottom right-hand corner, the sort of bend of the Thames, with Tower Bridge, St Paul's Cathedral, the London Eye. And if you do a nice tourist walk past Buckingham Palace towards Hyde Park, you find us there in South Kensington. And then moving kind of further to the west, you find our new White City campus, which is allowing us to expand to open up more research labs, things like our advanced hack space, for example, and then as well our hospital campuses, and then Silwood Park is our life sciences campus for graduate students located just outside of London. That fits in with the programmes on offer there. So just to run quickly through the sort of programmes we do offer at Imperial. So I said we're a specialist institution, but we offer a very wide range of programmes. So we have many different engineering departments, ranging from aeronautics to materials to electronics. So the full scope of engineering programmes. Of course, full range of scientific programmes, including the Centre for Environmental Policy, where Morena is based. And then in terms of medicine, at the undergraduate level, we do offer the kind of doctor training programme, the medicines MBBS programme, as well as medical biosciences. And then we have a very wide range of graduate programmes in quite a wide range of medical sort of fields, ranging from things like public health to brain sciences and infectious diseases. We do also have a business school, which currently only offers full degrees in graduate programmes, does feed into the undergraduate curriculum for a few programmes. We also do have a number of institutes that kind of bring those strengths together. So I mentioned we're very interdisciplinary between the sort of sciences, engineering, medicine and business. So these institutes kind of cross over those areas as we think bringing those kind of disciplines together, we can tackle some of the world's biggest problems. So whether that's things like our Institute Global Health, the Grantham Institute for Climate Change, and Energy Futures Lab, we think that we have the brains here at Imperial who can really make a difference in those areas. But we also want our students to be able to kind of explore outside their department as well. So from next year, all our undergraduate students will be able to take a class outside of their department. So they may be studying a degree in chemistry or a degree in mechanical engineering, but they can also then take a class in philosophy, languages, management, for example. We also encourage them to get involved in research that's going on, obviously at a very high level in the institution as well. There's many different ways to kind of build on their kind of science or engineering or medical degree experience. For graduate students are automatically part of our graduate school, which offers an award-winning professional skills development program to really kind of make sure they're making the most of their time with us, getting the most out of their programs in terms of PhD students, making sure they've got the right research skills to really kind of do as well as they can, or things like networking skills or communication skills as well, to kind of set them on that path for their future career. So I mentioned the kind of innovation side of things here at Imperial, and we do have a real kind of ecosystem of innovation. We do think that our staff and our students will be able to really make a difference in a wide range of fields. So we want to enable our students, no matter which program they're studying, to kind of make their ideas into a reality. So if they have that eureka moment one day and they think they're going to create something that could make a difference in the world, whether they're studying maths or mechanical engineering, they can go along to our advanced hack space now and start using things like 3D printers, laser cutters, woodwork, metalwork machines to actually make their ideas into a physical reality. Once they have this amazing product, this prototype, what do they do with it? Well, now they can go along to our enterprise lab and take part in sort of mentorship schemes, learn how to develop their business ideas so that they can actually kind of launch their product into a viable business. We have a number of enterprise sort of programs which do have sizable kind of funding pots available, things like our Venture Catalyst Challenge, with an £80,000 prize fund for teams to compete for. And our We Innovate programme is actually for female-only entrepreneurs. So we want to make sure that our female entrepreneurs are fully supported. But it's not all kind of all hard work and no play at Imperial, just to kind of mention all the other things that our students can get involved in. So whether that's through things like sport, music, we actually have an art gallery on campus. We have 380 different clubs and societies. So no matter whether students want to get involved in sport, cultural activities, something academic related, to try something new, or for example, we have our cheesy eating society. So students can just meet people and sit around and eat cheese. So no worries about kind of meeting other people. Very quickly, just in terms of the application side of things, for any students interested in undergraduate studies, it's through UCAS, the Central University Colleges Admission Service that UK universities use. You are going to look at kind of specifically quite high entry requirements in terms of what we're looking for. I'm obviously very happy to answer any kind of questions via email about specific requirements, but just to kind of note that we will have sort of subject requirements. So mathematics, for example, will be very important for engineering programs. For graduate students, for those interested in a master's degree, predominantly we are going to be assessing you based on your undergraduate curriculum, so the sort of GPA you've got, the scores you've got in your undergraduate degrees. We don't normally look for additional testing. So for most of our programs, we're not necessarily needing the GMAT or GRE, for example, but of course, there are exceptions for that all the time. So programs like our MBA program, computing may ask for those, but generally it will be based on your undergraduate degree. We do ask for you to write a personal statement, so very much highlight why you want to do that program. Why are you a suitable candidate for that? So telling us really, what we can't get from your transcript. So have you had any work published? Have you done sort of research placements or internships, for example, that's particularly relevant? We then also do require 2 academic references as well as English language certificates as well. For those of you who may be interested in a PhD with us, there's kind of 2 different routes to go down this. You may see under certain departments a list of PhD vacancies where we're looking for someone to come and research in a very particular area for us, and you can apply sort of directly to that, a little bit like a job application. Otherwise, you can see what research is going on within that department, what are the research kind of groups, and then actually it's a question of approaching a potential supervisor to see if there is the right fit, whether there's a fit within that particular research group. So often this can be just starting off in an email conversation. So introducing yourself, introducing kind of why you want to research with them, why it's a good fit. At that point, it's not necessarily a full research proposal, but it's having a very clear idea of why you want to be in that department and why there is a good match for that. Once you have a supervisor lined up, that's kind of a big part of the battle, really. So quite often then it's just a simple kind of application process directly to the university, as I mentioned, as the master's program. So, with your academic transcripts and references, etc. So just very quickly on the kind of scary bit, the costs. So this is just kind of an average cost that our students tell us they spend per month living with us. So yes, London is not a cheap city. You will get discounts as a student. Things like you don't have to pay council tax. You get a discount on your transport across the city, on shops, restaurants, cinemas. But you do need to be prepared. Obviously, there is a significant cost to study in. In terms of fees, these do vary between programs. And again, there isn't a significant amount of funding necessarily in terms of scholarship provision at undergraduate level. There is a little bit more available for graduate students, but it is very much a question of doing your research and finding out what would be available to you in particular. So whether that's sort of funding in a particular department, institution-wide scholarships, or particularly what you might be able to actually get from your home country. So the British Council is a fantastic resource for doing this, finding out what funding is available from your home country. But also looking at things like industry as well, to really kind of leave no stone unturned to what might be available out there. So just to highlight a few more things about what's on offer at Imperial. So we certainly support our students when they're with us, whether that's sort of academically through sort of personal tutor systems or course directors, to kind of independent counselling services or kind of health services as well. So there's plenty of different support networks out there. We really, at the end of the day, you're always going to be better in your studies if you're happy and well supported. So we want to make sure we are supporting our students. We do have a specific international student support team as well. So whether that's kind of at the beginning of the process in terms of your immigration and visa, they'll support you through that. Or indeed, once you actually arrive on campus, they do things like welcome events and trips for international students to meet each other and help settle in. We do also have a fantastic careers service. So they're there from day one to support you in sort of building those networks, kind of working on your CVs, your resumes, to holding large employer fairs. And you can rest assured that employers want to come onto campus and meet our students. And very much our students are highly sought after. And this kind of leads into why we've got such fantastic records in terms of kind of employability and starting salaries. And our students do go on to do a very wide range of things in a very wide range of careers, whether that's kind of using their degrees directly through going on to kind of engineering companies and things like Formula One racing, to obviously the business world, or as I mentioned, kind of more and more sort of carving their own path through startup companies, using their experiences at Imperial on the sort of enterprise side of things to kind of forge their own path through an entrepreneurial route. And you will be part of a global network across the world of the Imperial alumni. We've actually launched a new platform called Imperial Plexus, a little bit like Facebook for alumni, I guess. but it allows you to connect with other alumni, either in your home city, or if you were to arrive somewhere new, for example, you can find out who might be around for you to network with. And actually more and more alumni are actually doing things like posting job vacancies out on there as well, as they're keen to hire other alumni from Imperial, knowing how well equipped they'll be to work with them. So that's all from me, a bit of a whirlwind tour of Imperial. Very happy to answer any questions, but also offline as well. My email address is there and will be shared with you. But to connect with us either through webinars we run or through things like our Instagram accounts, social media accounts. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Catherine. So we're gonna now start with the Q&A session. I just want to do a quick poll to our audience to know a little bit more about everyone that is joining us today. Jessica, if you can help us please to launch the poll now. First, we want to know where you're joining us from. So you should be able to see the poll popping in your screen. See. Okay, so we got some people from Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, Peru, and the USA. And we also would like to know, what do you do? Are you a student? Are you a working professional? Are you working as a researcher? Jessica can help us as well with the poll. There we go. You can tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Don't be shy. I can see, sorry, the results are coming in. I can see people are voting. There's still a few of you haven't. I'll end in 5 seconds. Okay.
Great. So most of everyone is working professionals. We got a couple of graduate students and one undergraduate student as well joining us today. Okay, so the first question that we got is from Camila Vargas. Says, I would like to know how to encourage the initiatives to stop the global climate change from local communities, which are threatened by violence. I'm assuming that that question is for Morena.
So hi, Camilla. Thanks for your question. That's a really interesting question. So I think when you're thinking about encouraging people to engage in different sustainability initiatives, whether it's associated to conservation of biodiversity or climate change, I think a lot of the time you should embrace the fact that people will be engaging in a particular initiative for lots of different reasons. So if you can give them other reasons to engage, so potentially there's you know, if there's a sustainability initiative which addresses climate change, which also creates a community feel, or which provides people with some sort of safe space, or provides people with a little bit of extra cash, then these are the initiatives that are likely to be adopted. I think because there's lots of benefits to adopting them. And if you're talking about communities that are threatened by violence, potentially trying to tap into that at the same time, that would be ideal.
Great. That answered your questions, Camila. And we got another question from Maria Julieta. Well, first, she's saying congratulations for your presentation and the case that you presented, Morena. And she wants to ask about the case of Fiji. Is it connection with the UN climate framework called REDD+?
Again, thanks, Maria Julieta. That's an interesting question. So no, locally managed marine areas aren't connected to RED+, so RED+ is one of the initiatives that we're hoping to look into in the future. So I'll let you know, like if you're interested in hearing how that initiative spreads or the insights that we come about, just follow me on Twitter or on my email. So my Twitter account is @MorenaMills, and my email is m.mills@imperial.ac.uk, and I can send you those results when they come out.
Great. We got another question from Laura Moreno. Dr. Mills, what advice would you offer someone who's looking to study in the UK? I love living in the UK. I love living in London. It's a very cosmopolitan city. There's I love the diversity and the buzz that London has. I think so I'm from Brazil, right? So a tropical country. So I struggle a little bit with the cold, but otherwise, but the summers are amazing, and yeah. So I highly recommend London and the UK in general. If you are from a big city, like, so I was born and raised in São Paulo, so I kind of wanted to find a university which was one of the best universities in the world, but also within a big city. So I wouldn't really go to a university which was very far away. One of the nice things about the UK is that it's very highly connected. So yeah, so I think it's just about look at the university's reputation, but also and courses, but also think about lifestyle, because it's very different when you come to the UK compared to like your life in Argentina or Brazil or anywhere like that. Another question came in from Elizabeth Gardusa. She wants to know if you could deepen more about the Mexico's UMAS, if you were involved in this.
So I've never been involved in setting up the UMAS, but one of my PhD students is studying how they were set up, and she's studying how they spread. So I can't tell you all of her results, because otherwise I'm going to ruin her publications. But if you send me an email, I'll get you in touch with her. And it's a fascinating case. And there's both a story about the private UMAs and the communal UMAs, which have very different spread in different ways. So yes, please, Elizabeth, send me an email, and I'll get you in touch with her.
So everyone that signed up actually will get the recording of the webinar, and we'll also be sharing contacts from Catherine and Morena, so you can get in contact with them if there's any other further question that you may have. We got another question from Ana Chero. Thank you for your presentation, really interesting. How dealing with the government issues when there is so much bureaucracy and other interests like industries in the middle, when you are looking to impose conservation policies?
So I was in the World Biodiversity Forum last week, which is a conference in Switzerland, and one of my colleagues, Fabio Scareno, who's a Brazilian researcher, he had this really optimistic like a really positive take on a lot of the movements that were happening in Brazil at the moment. And as you may have known, as you may know, the Brazilian president at the moment isn't a fan of environmental conservation at all. So I think to me, I thought that was really interesting, and I think the reason that we can be optimistic, and the reason that we I guess one of the issues with the current governments and all the government bureaucracy, it's that it basically nearly muffles all like any energy that you have to actually engage in action. So I think, but I think because we've had so many crazy governments around the world at the moment, through there's also been a lot of opportunity for people to go and take action themselves, whether that's engaging with the climate movement or engaging with the environmental movement, and actually doing things that every single individual can do. So I wouldn't be discouraged by bureaucracy. Bureaucracy sucks, but it's I think I think you can just do everything that you can do ourselves, and encourage other people to do the same, and I guess through people power, basically, we can I believe we can actually overcome a lot of those challenges.
Next question is, what are some of the challenges you had in your career field?
There's multiple. So within environmental conservation, so I guess you're always, a lot of my research is very applied. So I'm always basically engaging with governments, and sometimes governments will be interested, or business, and sometimes they'll be very interested, and sometimes they won't be interested. So the I guess the speed at which a lot of the different research projects happen is varied, basically on how the engagement of the stakeholders. But it's and there's other challenges with being an academic. But these so like as you probably are aware, there's a different I guess being a woman within the academic sphere is a little more challenging than being a man, because of the processes that are in place. But at the same time, I work for this department called Center for Environmental Policy, where the director of the department is absolutely amazing, and he's committed to basically removing any barriers from women kind of progressing in the field. And I know Imperial has lots of different initiatives that's kind of focused around the same thing. So I think there's lots of challenges in terms of being an academic or being a woman in academia, but I think there's a lot of a lot of the barriers that were there before are being broken or removed.
Great. We got next question, which I'm assuming maybe Catherine could answer this question. It says, I'm looking for a scholarship to do a PhD in the UK. I saw that a lot of opportunities are only for UK students. Are there possibilities to get funding for international students? Can we work at the university while studying?
Sure. So yes, unfortunately, probably there is more funding for UK students and international students, but there will be some that are applicable to both. It's a question of kind of looking, as I said, in many different resources as possible. So, for example, at Imperial, we have 100 PhD scholarships available, and that's across the university. And that is open to both home and EU and international. We're looking for kind of the best students basically for those. Then you might find department scholarships. It's certainly worth, if you're in that process of contacting supervisors, do ask them if they're aware of any kind of funding available, particularly for their research going on. There's then also things like applicants for our university, what's called the Alternative Guide to Graduate Funding. And that's an external database of many different types of scholarships. Being honest, they tend to be on the smaller side, but what some students do is kind of bring them together to basically kind of what we call portfolio funding. So you might have a few £1,000s from one pot, a few £1,000s for another pot, and that is enough to kind of get you through. So really, it's kind of starting the process early to really kind of research as much as possible, because it, particularly in the UK, if you're doing a PhD, doesn't naturally come with funding associated with it. You do need to kind of look to find that funding as well. In terms of working, then yes, certainly that is possible. Some of our PhD students may be sort of graduate training sort of programs and teaching assistants, and that might be an option. If you want a Tier 4 student visa, you are allowed to work up to 20 hours per week during term time. You just need to be obviously a little bit careful about balancing that kind of study time or kind of research time versus the work time in terms of making sure that the reason you're here is to study or research, and that doesn't suffer because you're taking on sort of paid employment. You can work full-time in the holidays, which is actually what a number of our students do, because then maybe you can do something like a solid internship, which are paid in the UK over the summer holidays, for example. So that's another way to kind of support yourself as well.
We got another question, probably our last question because of time. Elizabeth Garduza asked, is there any postgraduate course in Imperial that involves sustainable design or material practice?
I don't think specifically in that. We have a programme sort of design engineering with the Royal College of Art that is kind of looking at design engineering, and certainly sort of sustainability can be a big part of that. It wouldn't necessarily be completely you know, the title of the degree programme, but that might be an area to look at. We also have a material science department, so that might be something to look at as well. But if you want to email me afterwards as well, I can help.
Yes.
Sorry, just to add to that, so if you're interested in sustainable design, have a look at the Dyson Institute. It's an amazing institute with some incredible researchers that are like doing super cutting edge work in terms of design, sustainable design. So to achieve a lot of the sustainable development goals. So yeah, there's some really cool things happening at Imperial. I'm not sure about the courses that they're running, but I'm sure they must be running courses that are associated to it. So it's worth looking at that, and then looking at CP as well, because there's a lot of Center for Environmental Policy, just because there's a lot of yeah, brains kind of going in that direction, and Dyson and CP are working together a lot at the moment.
I hope that answers your question. If there's no more questions so far, is there anything else that you, Morena or Catherine, would like to add?
No, just
No,
thank you very much for attending.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you so much everyone for attending today, and we hope you enjoyed the webinars we did and you learned something new from Morena or Catherine, and luckily we will be welcoming you soon to study a PhD, a master's, undergraduate in the UK. I also wanted to remind you that this week we're gonna be running different webinars with women from the Americas leading to the International Women's Day. So you're more than invited to sign up to attend those webinars as well. And thank you very much, Morena and Catherine, for being here today.
Thank you.
Well,
Super, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you.